So I think I've always been interested. I studied it as a student 30 odd years ago. It was the one thing that I really just was absolutely passionate about during my GCSEs and A levels, and I was always interested in ancient sort of cultures, ancient monuments, hill forts and churches and a whole range of different things. I always say to students it's like doing an A level in Lord of the Rings, really. You get the same sort of feel, these legendary figures coming off the page, and it's just really a fascinating subject, really. So I love it. From my own personal experience of being in school, I think everybody remembers primary school being a wonderful sort of loving place and full of colour and warmth, and then you get to secondary school and it's slightly different. Mine was just like a grey school, and no, I'm not saying all secondary schools are like this, but it's a little bit regimented. I think coming to Cirencester College, you can really just be yourself again, and you can just enjoy your learning, and you can just really be passionate about something that you're really interested in, and you get given that sort of freedom to find yourself in lots of different ways, really. I really enjoy sort of the relationship we have with the students. I think we treat them as adults. They show us respect. They've got their responsibilities, but we give them a lot of responsibility as well, and it's a really nice stepping stone for whatever they're going to do next. You definitely need an inquisitive mind. You definitely need a love of reading as well, so there's lots of reading. I'll help you as much as I can in terms of giving you exactly what you need to read, but you pick up a text like Herodotus, you want to get into it, so definitely a love of reading. There are audiobooks and what have you, but definitely a love of reading would absolutely help. You've got loads to cover, huge periods to cover. If you sort of allow yourself to be immersed in it, you'll end up loving it, and it will just sort of take over, really. So somebody who's passionate about it, really. So there are two components, two different parts of the history, really. The older part is from the 5th century BC, which is the Greek component, and that covers this epic period. I use epic quite a lot in my lessons, and it is an epic period where the Greek city-states, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, all different individual autonomous city-states with their own politics, their own history, really. They have to basically come together at the start of the 5th century to try and unify against an external threat from Persia. This Persia, the massive empire that stretches from Turkey, modern-day Turkey, right to India, huge empire, and they have to deal with this external threat, and they have to put aside their differences, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and it's just a really fascinating period. It's the first history text, Herodotus, so we've got the first historical text. Herodotus is writing in the 5th century BC. He was a child during the Persian Wars, and this is the first history book, so it's unprecedented, so you have to work really hard to get into this. So the ancient history, the ancient Greek side of things, we look at the Persian Wars, we look at the breakdown relations between the Greek city-states as well in the later part of the 5th century BC, when Athens and Sparta basically end up at each other's throats. So it's quite sad, really, to see these great allies turn against each other and end up having a much more protracted war than they did against the Persians. So that's the first part. The second part really is Rome, the Julio-Claudian period, so from 31 BC to around about AD 68. So we look at the development of the imperial institution with Augustus, the first Roman emperor, who comes to power really in 31 BC, and the following 4 emperors of Tiberius, Gaius, Claudius and Nero. So we look at the development of the imperial state and the different characters, very much focused in on the different characters. And it's very different from the Greek period, because you're looking at the politics and you're looking at the influence of women in the imperial court, you're looking at conspiracies, assassination and intrigue and gossip and a whole range of different things. So it's a very different animal really. And then we look at, in the second year, we go back to Greece, we look at Sparta in more depth. Sparta is one of the most unique and completely intriguing states ever to exist, based on a military, basically the whole ethos of their whole state was to provide the most invincible warriors in the world, and they did that quite successfully for at least 250 years. But there's a lot more to Sparta than just the martial aspect, if you like. And then we go back to Rome and Britain in the second half of the second year, and we bring all of this phenomenal world back to Britain, and we look at the Roman Britain module. So we start off with the Claudian invasion in AD 43, where the Romans attack and consolidate their position, invade and consolidate the conquest of Britain over the next 100 years or so. So it's really nice, because you on the one hand you've been in the Mediterranean, you've been in these exotic places, and the next thing, where we are in Cirencester, you're literally talking about legions marching past the college. Do you know what I mean? Right past the college. So it really, in a really, genuine sense, it brings it all home as well. So it's fantastic. 2 exams, but what's quite nice about the exams, we have the Greek component and the Roman component. They're exactly the same format. So you've got two essays you have to do in the exam. 2 essays, 1 source-based question and 1 question based on a prescribed debate. So there's basically a historian, an extract from a modern historian, and you either agree or disagree and use your evidence to support your argument. So it's very sort of straightforward. So it's quite nice actually. It's quite a nice exam. At the moment, every year for the last 5 years or so, we've had a student at least one student go to Oxford or Cambridge, so from the class. So that's quite nice. But we've had students going all over the place really. We've had students doing physics, we've had students doing American studies, we've had students doing creative writing, we've had students doing ancient history and archaeology. Very often, I would say most often, higher education. But we have had students going into employment as well, apprenticeships after the college. We try and do, we do an a trip to Hadrian's Wall, so we do that every year. So there's a few days up at Hadrian's Wall, because that's a key part of the Roman Britain component of the Roman Britain unit, and that's a fantastic trip. We stay in Newcastle and on the Hadrian's Wall, and then every year we try and alternate between going to Rome for a shorter trip, about 3 days, just in Rome, and then the alternate years we try and get to Greece. That's a longer trip. That's a longer trip of around about 7 days, and we get to go and see these phenomenal places like Thermopylae and Delphi and Athens and Sparta. And as I say to the students, it's more like going on a field trip to Middle Earth, really. That's what it feels like when you stood in Sparta looking around at the mountains, and it's a pretty special place, really.